Welcome back, Paul Catalina, Pierre Nugent, and it appears that, other than it was a head-on collision.
Oh, wow.
But it did happen at the light here, so I don't think either side was going all too fast. We had, this is probably 6 months into us being in this building, there was a really bad accident at the thing, so I was concerned that was happening again.
Oh, no.
So I wanted to make sure, because we had to actually go out and help with that one, because it was at a time of day where there wasn't a whole lot of traffic, and, we had to call 911 and all that. So wanted to make sure, but it looks like there was already a sheriff there, a constable, actually. So that was a nice stroke of luck, but it appears everybody's relatively okay. So
okay, well, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear it.
So, but really kind of scary out there. But Emery just hopped up, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" So, it's that was nuts. So, Pierre, let's continue talking a little bit about the Big Ten and where we see it. I want to go back to Will Howard for a second. Will Howard, if you go back to the game that he had against Texas when he was at Kansas State a year ago, kind of wilted down the stretch, right? He wilted down the stretch. Now, if we go back to, other times where he had some big games, but this was a moment where he did. He wilted down the stretch a little bit. I'm not trying to put it all on Will Howard, but I wonder, because he's been playing so well at Syracuse, and they did change the offense. That's why they brought in initially Bill O'Brien, and then he took the BC job, and then it's Chip Kelly. Well, if Kyle McCord was still there running the Chip Kelly offense, do we think that Kyle McCord would have won that game? Yeah, he lost one game as the starter at Ohio State, and that was to the eventual national champion Michigan.
Yeah. That I think that's a very fair question. And in the world of NIL and transfer portal that we live in now, I know that we get to play this game, time and again now, year after year. But I think it's a fair question to ask. I think Will Howard has all the ability in the world, but sometimes you have to question of what's in between the ears, I think, a little bit with him. And not to say that he's not, fully capable or anything like that. But when the pressure rises, you want to see, especially, I get it. It's the hardest position in sports. I totally get it. You want to see your quarterback rise to the occasion. And he almost did it, but, almost is only, as only good in horseshoes and hand grenades. So I think Will Howard will be fine in the long run. I'm in my head, I'm joking to myself, is Curtis Rourke going to take Indiana? Is this team just crazy enough to do this thing? I personally, I don't see it happening, especially given some of the games that are still on their schedule. But Indiana's been a fun story, haven't they? Goodness gracious.
Yeah, no, we were going to get to that. Indiana, I don't know how for real they are, but they certainly look like they are, right? Like they keep winning games, and I don't know if they're going to, be in the playoff, but they're going to take a chunk out of somebody's playoff hopes, I think, or at least make them nervous.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when it comes to the Big Ten, I still think that despite the loss to Illinois, and Illinois is a great team. Illinois is playing very well this season, and this is no shade or no knock to Illinois. But I still, when I watch Nebraska, even though it's not perfect, and Matt Rule probably as well as anybody out there, when I watch them play, there's something about Nebraska that I'm like, if they could just get to just tweak a couple of things, I still think this team has a real shot at making some serious noise. I have a lot of faith in Nebraska. There's something about Nebraska that I just like. I know it wasn't pretty against Rutgers, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. I'm kind of caught in between with Nebraska of, okay, yeah, it didn't look pretty against Rutgers, but at the same time, too, that defense still held them within 7. I mean, are we going to nitpick about whether you win by 7 or whether you win by 27? I don't want to get into that kind of argument with people about it, but I don't know. I still like Nebraska to do some things by the end of the year.
Yeah, I do too. I think that they can build up some momentum. I think that they've got I'm trying to think. They've got Ohio State left, and that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But they've got a real shot at being 9-3 or 10-2. If they're 10-2 in the Big Ten, there's a good shot they are in the playoff. Now they're not ranked currently, so they need beating Ohio State would put them into that conversation. Let's not put the cart before the horse. They've got to beat Indiana this weekend, which I think is low key the second best game of the week after Texas and Georgia.
Absolutely. I mean, Texas and Georgia, I'm absolutely going to be watching, but you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Nebraska and Indiana, I mean, especially with the way Nebraska has been over the last decade, I know that, nationally, there might not be a lot of luster on this game, but if people pay close attention to what's going on at both of those programs right now, this is even though, like you said, even though Nebraska is not ranked, it has all the feelings of a top 25 matchup and a game that has major implications the rest of the way for both of these teams. If they have a realistic chance of getting into a playoff or being a party crasher by the end of the year, this game has so much at stake for both of these teams. And for one, I can't wait to watch it.
No, I think it's going to be an excellent game. I think that you've got kind of a little bit of contrasting styles, and Kurt Cignetti and Matt Rule are kind of cut from the same cloth of they are the football coach's football coach. I promise you that. And Kurt Cignetti's doing some things at Indiana that look, the Purdue fans are panicked about it because they what did Jack call them? 9-win Indiana is tough for Purdue fans to deal with. And they have had a very long drought of, I would say, overall athletic success in the Big Two. Men's basketball is as important to them as it is to anybody anywhere on planet Earth. It's as important at Indiana as it is at Kansas, at Kentucky, at Duke.
Yes.
But they are not in that conversation
anymore
and have not been for a very long time. So that pains them. Then when you're like, okay, well, at least maybe football can be kind of good. And they had Michael Penix for a little bit, and he kept getting hurt. Then he goes to Washington and becomes a first-round pick. And now they actually maybe have some hope in that athletic department. Best of luck to them. I would be lying if I said I wasn't, rooting for Nebraska and Smokey and Matt Rule and all the people, Sean Patton and all the people we know on that staff. I really want them to do well. I especially want them to do well. And another very Seinfeld and Larry David way for spite to the Carolina Panthers.
Sure.
So, you fired a coach who might have wound up being pretty good if you just let him go for a little bit. But because you have problems, you just did that. So I'm absolutely can't wait to be butt on couch for that game on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think one thing with Indiana too, I think it's fair to put them in this category. It a lot of times when you and I discuss our favorite teams and sports teams and people who root for their various teams, if you're not going to be good, at least be entertaining in your losses. Even though Indiana hasn't lost a game yet, Indiana kind of has that feel to them because they can put up points in a hurry. They've got that fun style of offense that they like to play. And I think Indiana falls in that category for people who haven't watched Indiana play. They are absolutely, in my opinion, that team of, if they were 2-4 instead of 6-0, I still think I would still call them an entertaining team with the way they play football. So if you haven't watched Indiana play, this absolutely is going to be the game to see. I think it's a measuring stick game for, even though Nebraska is the dog here in this game, Paul, I am looking, I like to pay attention to these things. And when I saw the line where it is for Indiana, I was almost like, let me get in the car and make a drive down to Iowa because there's a nice, crisp $100 bill sitting in my pocket with Nebraska's name on it right now in terms of the points. So, it's going to be fun.
Is that the closest state for you?
To get to where I need to get to in order to operate my business. Yes, it is. Yes. I think I technically could go to Wisconsin, but Iowa's a shorter drive.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's not, what is it, 2 hours?
Well, actually, Wisconsin, I could cross the border to Wisconsin in less than an hour, but then you have to like get to places and stuff. So
so it's kind of the wilderness on the border.
Yeah, I think you have to be in person in Wisconsin. I don't think you can do it on your phone. Iowa, you can do it on your phone.
I one day we'll just take the time to go through all 50 states in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
in terms of rate, yeah.
Where do you think Texas is going to come in almost next to last? Even though,
absolutely.
Mark Cuban sold the majority of his interest in the Mavericks to the Edelmans, and they're trying to get it here. So we'll see, how many, pockets they can grease. But
look, I have a legitimate question. Like I would have to imagine that everyone in the gambling and casino business in the states of Oklahoma and Louisiana.
Oh, stop right there. No, that's the biggest problem. The second biggest problem is there's people who just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
The biggest problem is the fact that Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico, all have it.
Yes.
And listen, and for that fact, so does Mexico.
Yeah.
So who actual Mexico?
Yes.
Well, I guess New Mexico was at one point old regular Mexico.
Yeah.
But Mexico, all like everywhere that borders Texas. I'm not even sure if Arkansas has it yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not sure actually.
But again, I like you can, but Arkansas, like same thing. Right there in the Arklatex corner up there, you can just go to Shreveport and do whatever you want.
Right.
Right there. So I don't know if they're pushing as hard, but Texas is a gigantic state, and there's lots of places you could put casinos. But look at you, and I know you've been there. I know you've been to WinStar. I often joke that the city that WinStar is in should be called Barely, Oklahoma, because it's like 2 miles in. Like you are 2 miles across the state line. It's barely Oklahoma, barely. And so they don't want to lose. Like they don't want to lose that if they can help it. Now, granted, I think that's going to be a futile enterprise eventually because someone will get something done here, and I don't know how much it'll really affect them anyway.
I think you're right. I think it's only a matter of time. It might take longer in Texas, but I have to, like I was saying, I have to imagine everybody in the casino business in Oklahoma and Louisiana, it has all the feelings of essentially the Cold War. They will tooth and nail. They will do everything they possibly can to obstruct or red tape any kind of law or notion that gambling could be legalized in the state of Texas, because they know if they do, the business that they will lose. Because if you drive, the joke was, from what I heard, even though I've never been there, I've driven through there, but the joke is that the casinos in Lake Charles, they're all Texas license plates. And when you go from Houston to Lake Charles in what, 2 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're all Texas license plates out there in Lake Charles.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you're gonna lose that, but it's and that's why I'm sure the lobbyists are going like, no. And the thing is that what they do is they give money to the anti-gambling groups.
Correct.
Like they give it to them, so that it's not them. So like the anti-gambling groups are like, well, I mean, we can't have this. No. And then that also covers it up. So when they have a politician in their pocket, the anti-gambling groups is like, well, I'm just fighting for the integrity of the state here. Like it has nothing to do with anything else. It's like paid for by, Gambling is Bad USA. And you're like, well, where did they get that money? Oh, from Harris.
They want you to believe, and kids, if you're watching, the adults want you to believe that it's a really complicated world. But when you break it down and simply connect dots, you'll be amazed at how simple the world actually works. And you'll understand why things work the way they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a break. When we come back, it's time for some random NFL chatter